From Omaha, Nebraska to New York City. From planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space. A podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Switch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
You know, Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battle Line Podcast.
Switch is on Battle Line podcast, and actually I did get some messages because every now and again you're not there and people are like, is Chris Peranto alive and well?
No, I'm dead. This is my ghost. I'm such a dad. I swear that's like dad joke material right there. No, I'm okay. I just the last one, I actually had a speaking event in Fort Worth, Texas, and so I just couldn't get it. It's tough to get on the podcast and travel. And to do it from the hotels, Ian and I have discussed that where I could do it from a hotel, but it's the internet's so spotty and, from a motel room, and it doesn't come off real well whenever I've done that before. So it's always better I think Ian takes it. Ian obviously can handle it, and it allows me to concentrate on the speaking event, it takes a lot out of me. Yeah, it really does. The speaking actually, even though the events have gotten better over the years with the groups I've spoken with, the actually speaking, it does. I told Ian once, it's like every time I walk off stage, I've lost a year of my life, because it's hard to talk about it and stay motivated with it. But it is the story itself about Big Ozzy. It's not politics, as people want to turn it into all the time now, which is partly our fault. But it's about leadership and overcoming adversity. So getting up on stage, I show a lot of emotion. I do cry still in front of thousands of people, but I think it shows the rawness of what combat and what service is, and also sacrifice, and that also is part of leadership. So guys, anyway, I'm alive, I'm well. Just Ian's always willing to work with me, and thank God Ian can handle this on his own, because if we would have had to have done it where I had to do it on traveling, I don't think the podcast would have lasted, because I would have said no. I'd have said, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. So
I also think it's important to have a show every week, as much as the show is always going to be better if it's both of us, just truly. But I think to have a new show every week, people's attention span with podcasts and all that, it gets short. And people, there's so much great content out there, and people do forget about you if you're not doing stuff constantly. That's just the nature of the beast. And, we are competing with shows like, not on their level, but Joe Rogan and Jocko, and they have multiple shows going on every week. So we got to be on that same level.
Give it time, guys. We are, like me and Ian said, this is a marathon, guys. We're not sprinting. It's endurance, and we're the turtle that's going to catch those hares. And we will, as long as we want to keep doing it. If we choose to not do it anymore, well, that's our choice. But if we keep doing it, I say we will catch those people. Even the famous Joe Rogan, even though we don't have Black Rifle Coffee guys on too much, like Joe likes to do. I think they have we've had
Luke Ryan on plenty of times. I do love you.
I think they. Well, we're going to get into that. Let's stay out of that. Let's not get in those weeds right now.
No, but I mean, also, let's be honest. Joe Rogan got a like $100 million deal from Spotify. I mean, I'd be happy to make literally 0.5% of that. If we could do that, I'm fine.
That would be cool. I don't think Spotify enjoys us by any means at all. And Spotify doesn't even know who the fuck we are. So,
maybe I don't know. You never know, man. I mean, when I was doing the last show that I was on, we met with the people at Apple Podcasts. There was a time that they were putting banners up for like our interview with Tim Kennedy and stuff. So you never know where things are going to go. I should say to you guys, though, wherever you're listening, leave us a review. That stuff really helps. If you're on YouTube, I don't say it often enough, the show, subscribe, leave a comment. I mean, all too often for me, I really like something and I forget to hit like, and all that stuff really helps the algorithm and helps us be more visible to more people. So yeah, check it out, and keeps the show free as well. I mean, as much as we want to launch a Patreon soon, we're always going to have free content for you guys. And we'll probably have a little something more for the hardcore fans in the future. first things I wanted to mention before we get into anything else was that two major books out this week. Jason Piccolo, Unwavering: A Border Agent's Journey, and this is the definitive edition. He's had it out before, but as he said on his own posts and stuff, this is like a whole new book for him. He rewrote most of it, and then most importantly for us, I would say, forward for the book by Chris Tanto Peralta.
I was fun. I actually got we and Ian talked about this. I hate, it's like homework writing. I'll probably won't write a book ever again because it does feel like homework. But being able to sit down and actually get started and have to do 500 words, once I got started, it just flowed. And I admire what Jason did. Jason I'm proud. He's proud of what he did. He's courageous. I know the threats against you when you're a whistleblower against the government, when things need to be said. And there's a lot of you out there that claim to be tough guys that won't do that because I got to have my job. Well, you know what? Sacrifice is something to get the truth out. And Jason did that. He sacrificed his livelihood to sell something, and that's child trafficking that the government is part of, to get that out. So the book is very important. It also goes into his background. He was very open about it. So I was very proud to write the forward for it. And I'm also proud that Jason was able to speak out and didn't fall behind that protection of, I'm going to lose my job. He knew he was going to lose his job, but he spoke out anyway. And that shows a lot of courage, a lot of ethics, and a lot of integrity. So I'm just proud to be a part of it. It's an awesome book too. Awesome job,
for sure.
Jason.
Yeah, he's great. The only thing I would clarify, just that you said, just to keep it as fair as possible, when you say the government is a part of child trafficking, I would say it's better worded, I guess, to say they turned a blind eye to it. I wouldn't say they were part of it, but they kind of let it slide.
We'll just say tomatoes, potatoes there. Okay, that's just, I say they're
no, but I mean, because what the book is basically about is that these kids at the border were being handed off to unvetted sponsors, and the government just, they let it go. And actually, the fact that Jason still works for the government proves that everything he said is demonstrably true, because he would be forced out of any government position if he was just making up claims. And he proved his claims to be true, that, that was going on. And Jason even said on the show that, and Jason is not a hyper partisan guy by any means, but that Trump did something about it. And that when Biden was came to office, he basically reinstated that they were being handed off to unvetted sponsors, and the same exact thing was going on.
Let's use the famous political media word. They were complicit. That's the best word. We'll say complicit. I
agree.
Let's use complicit. That's the catchword for everything now. But no, I just even that though, not even just that, but just even him writing and telling about his upbringing, about becoming an agent, being in the military. He was very open about that, and very open about his failures, stuff that he screwed up on. And that takes a lot of guts just to put that out to the world. Say, hey, I screwed up, man. But guess what? I learned from it. I recovered, and I excelled past that. They go one step back, two steps forward. Well, that was Jason in his career. And that's something that takes courage to write about too. And that's in there as well. So great book. And I'm just very proud that he asked me to be a part of it. And I'm very proud I actually took the time to sit down finally and get it done, because I was about 2 weeks behind schedule just getting him that forward. But it seemed to work out well with the book, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
That's awesome. And then the other book I wanted to mention, of course, is, if you're hearing this on Monday, tomorrow, October 18th, finally the release is happening of Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy by Boone and Sarah Adams. And we're very excited for that book to come out, because it really is the definitive investigation of what went on and who was behind it, and the names, and they are truly putting a target on these guys' head. And as Sarah said, if the U.S. government isn't going to do it, hopefully some other government is going to do it and take these guys out. Some of them have been taken out, as Sarah said, but when you look at the news articles, the word Benghazi most of the time will not be mentioned. No,
you won't see it unless it's spun on a left wing agenda, and that's still sad to say that it's got to be that way. Leaders are able to admit their mistakes. We just talked about that with Jason. Well, that prior administration and even the administrations after are not willing to admit their mistakes. So you'll never see Benghazi put out there like it should be. And if it was, people would not just see, they see past the politics of it. They see the enemies that we still haven't gotten that were attacked us. They would know that Al-Qaeda was a huge involvement with the attack there, which people didn't know that until really Sarah came on. And then also they would also know that there was a lot of sacrifice that went on. And it was needless, to be honest with you. I mean, the things we were doing there in Benghazi, we shouldn't have been doing. But we were still there, and Rowan and Bub and Ambassador Stevens and Sean Smith, patriots, all of them patriots. They still laid down their lives for this country, which is still honorable, regardless if you know what the hell's going on or not. Ignorance is truly bliss, guys, but they did it. And I think if people saw that with Benghazi, more people would know what took place there, and we wouldn't be having these issues where it would still be continuing on and on about not just the political ramifications, but just the terrorists that still were never brought to justice. Whether it was killing them or putting them in some prison, even with our allies, it just would never happen. It's not going to happen either, because it's still going to, the left wing is still just, sorry guys, they're just, and parts of the right wing too. It is parts of the right are still not good to admit that Benghazi was one of the biggest debacles ever for an administration. And that was for both parties. But we're here and we're going to talk about it. And of course, Boone and Sarah Adams will continue to talk about it, as well as others that were in Benghazi, not watched it from a hotel 2 miles away, or said I was an eyewitness that wasn't an eyewitness. People that were actually on the ground fighting that night or had a lot at stake in Benghazi because we were actually working that area. We'll continue to talk about it, and we'll continue also to speak highly of Rowan and Bub, who sacrificed themselves. They gave everything to protect us, and they were the greatest humanity. I mean, that's really, truly the greatest humanity has to offer is people like Rowan and Bub, and that was something we will always continue to talk about.
Yeah, I'm only opening up Twitter here because I was going to say there's another book that's going to be coming out. That there's basically one more that I would say we're excited.
Oh yeah,
for,
you did.
We're gonna have him on.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure I have the name right because it's been a while. Oh wait, there I saw him there. Brad Poliska. So basically, yeah, he was on he was a Benghazi committee staffer. Yep. And Trey Gowdy is quoted. He put this on his Twitter bio as saying he wouldn't do what his supervisors instructed him to do, referring to him. So
sounds like, hey, I like that kind of guy. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I know Sarah is a fan of his, and one of the main things he's going to dive into in the book, which Sarah doesn't. I mean, she dives into plenty of things, but not this, is where the origin started of blaming the attack on a YouTube video. Yeah. He has the inside information on that, and I think for the first time, he's going to release that. So I said to Brad, whenever you have a release date for the book, which I think will be later this year, early next year, we'd love to have you on. So we like having people on who, you know, have been there and done that. And in terms of him, just like really investigated what was going on and what the mainstream media didn't want you to know.
Looking really forward to that, because I guarantee you I'm going to find out more information, even being a guy on the ground there that night that know and been through all that shit. And even after, with all the Dan Select Committee and being on the Hill and doing our testifying, I guarantee you I'm still going to find out more shit that I didn't know. And that's why I'm excited to have him on, because I want to know, I want to still know what took place. Whether anything comes of it, it still offers me some closure. And I do need that, because to think that Benghazi and what happened and what didn't happen still doesn't bother me. I'd be lying to tell you if it didn't. I'm not angry about it anymore like I used to be, but does it still float around in my head for every once in a while? Of course it does. So having somebody tell me, you know what, this is what actually happened. You know what? Thank you for letting me know. That's all I need to know. And I'm excited to have him on, bro. I really am looking forward to having him on, and look forward for his book too.
It definitely is wild that 10 years later, you're still learning stuff and we're still learning stuff. But when you think about it, even the more known 9/11, 2001, we're continually finding stuff out. I mean, I think for years, people assumed that Iraq was in some way behind that attack. And then when you look at the names of the people that were there, it was mainly people from Saudi Arabia, our great allies. I'm putting in air fingers quote for the people listening. And I mean, it's just true. I think it was a different time in America when we invaded Iraq, and people were like, we got to get these guys. They were behind 9/11. And I think all these years later, I think the perception at large would be they really had nothing to do with 9/11.
No, it was bin Laden and the people that he trained. It was the AQI element, and guys, Saudi Arabia, they are the biggest shit stirrers. And everybody that's been in the Middle East and fought in the global war on terror will tell you the same thing. Saudi Arabia is the biggest pot shit stirrers there in the Middle East. They're the ones that make all that crap happen. But yet there are allies, and I agree with Ian. I'll put that in air quotes too. Allies my ass. They're the ones that start up so much crap over there. And they are not, my opinion, they are not our allies, aside from the freaking oil and the fossil fuels that we depend on them for. But again,
and that we don't have to, which would be a whole nother political statement.
Exactly.
But we never got into it with Clint, but I have before in previous interviews. I mean, Clint grew up in Saudi Arabia at one point because his dad did work in oil. And Clint has said to me in previous interviews that like he hated the culture over there. He hated what this country stood for. And it was actually one of the things that inspired him to become a Navy SEAL.
Clint will be a regular guest. I love Clint, and this Clint's dedication, just even I didn't say dedication, but the respect for our show. I know how hard it is to do an interview in an airport. It sucks.
Yes.
And for him to do that with us in the airport, that meant a lot to me because hey, Clint, I get it, buddy. That is the worst thing to do is to try to find a spot in an airport and to do an interview, especially for 30 minutes. And he did it. So he'll be a regular.
Did an hour. He went a full hour.
Did he go an hour? Regardless.
We went 2 hours with Dale.
That's true. That's true. Regardless, awesome job. And I love his point of view on things and his demeanor. So we'll have him on again. And that's something maybe we can just focus on. It's just that his growing up in Saudi Arabia, because I'd like to hear that as well. Tremendous.
Yeah. And, before we get to Hamody, which I know many of you guys are really excited for, and I'm excited for part 2 of this, a good transition to another Navy SEAL story, since we're talking about Clint, was that actually your wife, Tanya, came across this video that's making the rounds of the Navy SEAL tear gas video and the reaction to it. And
the Navy SEALs training program is under increased scrutiny after the death of a former college football star earlier this year. And now CBS News has learned of a new investigation after we showed the Navy the video that you are about to see. CBS's David Martin has the details.
SEAL recruits blanketed with a cloud of tear gas while being ordered to sing Happy Birthday so they can't hold their breath. When the admiral in charge of Navy SEALs saw this video, he ordered an investigation, telling CBS News it raises questions about the lawfulness of the behavior. Exposure to tear gas is a standard part of SEAL training, but the investigation is examining whether the gas was administered at too close a range and for too long. The video was shot last year on San Clemente Island off California and obtained by investigative reporter Matthew Cole, author of Code Over Country, a recent book about SEAL Team 6.
I got this video from some SEALs, students who were trying to become SEALs. It felt that the instructors and the SEALs were abusive and very careless with their health.
Tear gas is a rite of passage for almost all military recruits, usually when they are taught how to properly don a face mask and what happens if they don't. The regulations for tear gas use in SEAL training require the instructors to stay at least 6 feet away from the recruits to avoid the danger of burns, and to use the gas for no more than 15 seconds. In this video, the gas lasts for more than a minute. These recruits crying out in pain have already proven themselves tough enough to complete 2/3 of the SEAL selection course. One appears to pass out, which the regulations warn is what happens when you try to hold your breath. Sven Jort of Duke University studies tear gas and its effects.
I think this type of training is really senseless. It looks more really like a form of hazing.
The investigation will determine whether the instructor somehow did not understand the proper procedures or whether they intended to inflict abuse or punishment on the recruits, in which case it could be a criminal offense. Nora?
Really, the person who wrote about it and I guess got it out to the media was this guy, Matthew Cole, journalist for The Intercept, really more of an academic, not someone with any experience in the Navy SEALs or the leadership in the Navy SEALs. And of course, there's people outraged by this video. And I know for you, it was a completely different reaction.
Yeah, guys, I've been actually CS gas, tear gas 4 times, and that was through training, through all of it. I actually had to recite the Ranger Creed. And if you go look at the Ranger Creed, how long that is, I had to do that in a tear gas, CS gas chamber. And it wasn't outdoors either. That was actually indoors. That was part of the rite of passage to become an infantry, not just the Ranger, just to be in the infantry. And the reason I had to recite the Ranger Creed is because I came back through it the second time. So when I came back through basic training the second time, they knew I was a Ranger before. That's drill instructors, drill sergeants wanted to screw with me. But guys, that's just normal training. And they were outdoors. I was able, and I'm just saying, this is just to put in perspective. I trained myself And I know a lot of guys do, not just me. There's a lot of guys out there that do this to get used to, not try to get used to the CS gas, that when it was outside, the last time I got CS gas, which was outdoors, I was able just to wet a cloth and put it over my face. Yes, my eyes burned. Yes, I did, my eyes were watering. Yes, I had snot everywhere. That's just, but I didn't even have to put on my mask because I'd got acclimated to it. That's what they want you to do. I think you got to get acclimated to it, especially if you're going to be a SEAL. You've got to get used to that stuff. You've got to be able to handle it. Not used that you're ever going to be able to breathe it. I mean, this ain't the Punisher. You can't do that. It's not going to happen. But able to just know that that's what the feeling is. I can handle it. I can fight through it. And just throw that out there and say that's hazing, bullshit. The regular infantry basic trainees go through that, and it's indoors. Infantry officers go through that. Any basic trainee goes through it. I just think it's something, again, that media wants to make outlandish and make the military weaker, and it will make the military weaker if you take that out. And again, one thing is, again, I want to point out the video, they were outdoors. And then I read the article, and there was one guy that passed out at the bottom. Well, look at this guy passed out.
I saw that. Yeah.
Well, no shit, dumb shit. That's why the SEALs tell you to sing happy birthday so you keep breathing. That's not just the hazing part of it. That's actually part of the training part of it. You failed to follow instructions. You held your breath. You didn't sing happy birthday like we told you to. So guess what, dumb shit? You passed out. I guess you're not going to be SEAL material because you don't know how to follow instructions. See, people don't see that. They think, oh, they're singing happy birthday to make fun of them. No, they're singing happy birthday so they make sure they breathe. I had to recite the Ranger Creed, so I made sure that I breathed so I didn't hold my breath for a minute and pass out. That is part of the training, and I guarantee you that kid that passed out, gone. And just because you didn't follow instructions, so if you're going to do that during training, you're going to not follow instructions when it means the most. You're on the battlefield, and you're going to get somebody killed. So that training is necessary. I told Ian, and maybe you found out about it, but my thing is, who the fuck sent that video in? Who got that video? When were we able to take videos in special operations training? That's not necessary. The American public, I'll be honest, you don't need to know what goes on in vetting. You don't need to know what goes on in special operations vetting. You don't need to know. You just need to know that those guys that get through it are trained, vetted, and they will give their lives to protect this country. And that's the kind of people you need. We need, not just you, we need out there, because I'm not one of those guys anymore. I'm here sitting with Ian. I'm here just taking it all in. But we need those kind of guys and men and women out there defending this country.
I mean, there are no women SEALs. So.
Well, but there's the women pilots, they're going to get CS gas. They go through hard ass training. The women combat medics that actually get attached to, they go through that same shit. It's not just the SEALs. They think it's
no. I just meant for the video.
Yeah,
unless, and I think even Kristen would say it this one. Unless you want to call Kristen Beck a woman, but that would be a whole nother topic. So, and also Kristen went through training as Chris Beck. So.
And Kristen's a badass. Whether you want to call Chris or Kristen, Kristen. And I guarantee Kristen will tell you the same thing, just like our buddy, even though he's more animated on it. Help me out.
Oh, Jake's wig. Jake's video was, and his was even further because he was talking about the deaths in training.
Yeah.
And you and I were discussing that as well because I do feel like every year since I've been a part of, I guess you would say, this community, I'm not a veteran, but as someone who gets to speak with operators, there have been quite a few deaths in SEAL training, as opposed to Ranger School, where you kind of rarely hear about them. As you were telling me, it's very rare.
We had a couple,
and a lot of them are like, but yeah, those were freak accidents of nature. Yeah, the guys a few months ago who got hit by a tree, that there's no way of stopping that, as opposed to guys drowning in SEAL training. And I think the drowning element is what makes SEAL training not necessarily harder, but more apt for people dying.
Well, there are. The water is water something you can't control. I hated going through Scout Swimmer and pre-scuba. I fucking hated that shit. Scout Swimmer was awful. But when we talk about that in the deaths, the risk assessments and CS, we'll throw the CS, the tear gas thing off the table now. We've talked about that. That's done.
Yeah, and we do have to get to Hamody in a minute.
Yeah, we do. But the actual risk assessments for when you're in the water, and it's a big deal. I remember the first time I did a surface swim, a bunch of Ranger that were scuba certified Rangers threw us in the Puget Sound and said swim in. I didn't know how to surface swim, and they got their asses chewed out for it because the Sergeant Major came in, Sergeant Major Roberts. Oh, Debo, love that guy. He came in and chewed their asses out. He's like, you guys did not do your risk assessments. You could have lost somebody out there, because they really could have. I mean, we came back in. I'm like, holy shit, I didn't know how to swim or anything. You just threw me in the Puget Sound. That's just stupid. But that's a big deal. You need to, if you're an instructor, guys, and I'm not going to knock the instructors out there. They do know what they're doing, but you do have to make sure you do your risk assessments. We have risk assessment cards that you go through training that you make sure it's safe. And you can pull those up online. You can see them. If they're not doing them correctly, then yes, an instructor needs to be reprimanded at least once. And then if he doesn't do it correctly again, out, or maybe just once and you're out.
But there is always going to be that risk there. I think it's fair to say. It's never going to be 100% proof of any, and that's why these guys are the toughest guys on the planet. Before we get to Hamody, which we're really excited to have part 2 of this, every show of ours is sponsored by Fort Scott Munitions. Fort Scott is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact, which is their trademark, in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in every state. You'd also go to the website, which is as simple as fsm.com. If you go to the dealer locator, just type in your zip code. You're going to find a dealer by you. Use the exclusive promo code BATTLELINE. You're going to get 15% off your order. Only available to our listeners of the Battle Line podcast. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battle Line Tactical, and the Battle Line podcast. Once again, guys, fsm.com, promo code Battle Line. And this is what you shoot with every day, pretty much.
Every day, it's tremendous. It's the best ammo on the market. And, you know, as we become even more environmentally conscious, which we should, if you're a shooter, you're shooting outside, clean up after yourself, clean up your ranges. And if you have the ability to do it, use lead-free ammo. And that's one thing I love about Fort Scott Munitions. It's all copper-based ammo. And so we're not poisoning the ground out there. And that's a big deal, guys. As much as people think us shooters are not environmentally conscious, we definitely are, because we love being outdoors. So Fort Scott Munitions, best ammo out there. It's copper. It's all copper lines, copper ammunition, and just a tremendous, great company and great family that owns the company, the Kraft family. I mean, great family that owns the company, the Kraft family.
Yeah, check it out, guys. And also, this show is sponsored by our friends at Bubs Naturals. Bubs Naturals has so many great products, whether it's the MCT oil powder, the collagen protein, and I especially lately have loved the apple cider vinegar gummies. These are great for digestion. They're great for detox of your body. So many benefits, really, and you can read more about that at bubsnaturals.com. Great for post-workout, the collagen protein, and also, you know, not just workout recovery, but great for your joints, your hair, skin, your nails. We've had people write into us at battlelinepodcast@gmail.com who have had some great results using Bubs Naturals and basically switching over from a whey protein to something like a collagen protein and the benefits they've gotten. So bubsnaturals.com, promo code BATTLELINE. You get 20% off. They also give back to the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation. So check them out, bubsnaturals.com, promo code BATTLELINE. And with that, let's get over to Hamody. So back on the podcast with us is Hamody Jasim, on by phone. I know you have the microphone in front of you, but we're on by phone because you're installing a new computer here. So yeah, that's why you probably won't hear Hamody on mic, but we've done this before. It should sound good. Back on with us, Hamody was last on episode 148, which was titled Tortured in Saddam's Iraqi Prison at 12 Years Old. We got into that story among a lot of other crazy things that you've experienced. So Hamody's better known as the terrorist whisperer, imprisoned under Saddam Hussein in Iraq, and then served in the newly formed Iraqi army after Operation Iraqi Freedom. And then, which we'll get into in this part, was recruited in 2005 by U.S. intelligence. Author of The Terrorist Whisperer, the story of the pro-American, which also became a film, host of the Black Site Show. And yeah, it's great to have you on. And we figured as this part 2, which people have been patiently awaiting, getting to the story of, getting recruited by U.S. intelligence. And it was a great episode with you. So we're glad to have you back.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I'm glad we're back. And Yeah, I'm so glad to be back in the podcast with you guys.
Thanks, buddy. And we'll just jump into it. I know we're kind of pressed for time, and people want to know because we left them hanging, man. We left them. You're at the MOD, and it looks like you're gonna get snatched up, man, because you got all the Americans out of there, all the soft skill people out of there, and now you're on your own with you got it. I don't know, was it AQI or was it Mahdi militia coming in? Who was starting to come into the building that you had to worry about, man?
So the building, because it was because it was the highest budget in the country at the time, that it was almost like the pie that everybody wants to have peace on. So you didn't only have members of Al-Qaeda who made it in. Perhaps members of Al-Qaeda were the new foreign object coming into the building. Prior to that, we had Iranians whose job to basically collect intelligence on Americans' agenda or American military leadership decisions. You got the Badr Corps, which is also part of Iran, the Mehdi militia. You kind of put all these terrorist organizations to the side. You only focused on those who wants to harm Americans immediately. Organizations like the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda don't really have any other thing other than just trying to kill as many Americans as they want. And perhaps these are the five. We had about five terrorist organizations that made our number highest list, that because these are the guys who would take action immediately. They wouldn't care. They're ruthless, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to kill Americans. So we didn't worry about the Iranians collecting on us because we were trying to worry about the guys who will blow us up just for the fact they could kill anybody. And to them, the building was extremely important because it's the only place in Iraq where you can see that many high-ranking officers walking around with a 9mm. As I talked about the kidnapping issue prior, this was just an open hunting zone for them. And Al-Qaeda came in to be top because not only that they were in the building trying to kidnap an American officer, these guys were in there, and it's their first time coming to touch with Americans, seeing people coming, walking into the building. So they figured this was the only place in Iraq where they could actually either kidnap somebody, kill somebody, and make damage to that high-ranking person. So that's the day I got ordered after 72 hours of travel ban to the MOD, and the travel ban was to the MOD, like back then in 2005, and it was called a travel ban for 72 hours. That's when I got called by U.S. Army Colonel Intelligence Officer Colonel John Burke, and I was ordered to go outside of the MOD, meet with the intelligence agents, secure locations, and that's when my recruitment officially as an intelligence asset to the U.S. intelligence kind of went on. And my job from that point on was to actually build a database of all these individuals, because this was the honeypot. This was where all that everybody would come into this place. So they took advantage of this to use me as a router to actually build a database. Who are the individuals in the Iraqi government that would want to be part of this piece? So that's what my job went in, to build the database and try to distinguish A, Y, and Z. Who are these people? What organizations they work for? What are the agenda? What are they trying to do? But of course, I didn't have the time in the day to focus on other people. So my main focus was really Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, and Naqshbandis, and mostly Sunni insurgency at the time, because they were taking physical aggression against the U.S. military. Of course, at the time, no one would think Iran and Al-Qaeda was connected in any way. That was not a thing in the time. Perhaps the media, the leadership, nobody wanted to believe it, right? That there was no evidence of it.
You think they had a little bit to do with it? Yeah, just a little bit. The media,
not a little bit, actually,
I know.
Believe it or not, in today's world, and to today's evidence into 2022, I'm in a lawsuit right now against Iran on behalf of Gold Star families in federal court. I'm testifying in 3 months.
I saw the photo of you with the title.
Yes. Actually, I'm testifying in trial in about a few months against Iran, because back then we didn't know how Al-Qaeda got this update. Like you have to understand 2004 all the way down 2005, we were having all these firearms exchanges. We were having all this cowboys shooting one another. And all of a sudden you see that Al-Qaeda got an update, which is called the EFB bomb.
Yep.
And they started smashing people. If you go look through the data of all the American soldiers that get injured in Iraq, you're going to find out most of the 17,081 American soldiers, 17,381 American soldiers got injured with a very small amount of time because
of an EFP. You call them EFP, we call them EFPs, energy force projectiles. They're like platter charges, man. They're
and if you look into the EFP material, how the EFP is done, this is a bomb that was studied in Iran, how to go through an armored Humvee.
Yep.
And the fact that this was a bomb that was smashing up armored Humvee into nothing. This bomb not only can destroy a Bradley vehicle, this bomb that could actually nilts the door where people inside can't get out. So this has all been tested. This has all been studied. And back then, no one believed this was a thing. Perhaps if you go back into the DOD footage, back then, which I remember, I was president at the time, Laura Logan and Michael War were questioning the U.S. leadership on how are you really going to prove that? Because everybody in Iraq or the U.S. leadership at the time believed that Bush was trying to attack Iran next. And that was the norm that was happening. So, of course, Iran did not leave any evidence on the ground. But in today's society, we're able to prove that Iran, if it wasn't behind providing materials, they were behind training. If they weren't behind training, they were behind funding. They found ways to be there supportive of these organizations. So back to my story at the time, we were not worried about the biggest denominator, which is Iran. We were worried about the guys who were attacking us. We weren't thinking about who's providing training, who's providing supplies, who's showing them how to do these things. And at the time, there were no evidence Iran was involved, because in Iraq, there was only one operative, which is hard to believe. It was one operative that Iran sent of no Iranian descent, who was highly trained. And this operative was actually in a Hezbollah operative. And he was highly trained, and his only job was to do training. He was the master trainer behind anything Iran wants to do. So Iran was smart enough to use a third party, not using Iranian operative, not using Iranian Revolutionary Guard officer. They use a Hezbollah operative who goes by the Ali Musa Daktuk, who's a Lebanese guy. And the guy is so damn skilled, he would go into Iraq speaking very fluent Iraqi dialect. Yeah. And this guy was in our prisons, arrested and detained, and we didn't realize the fact this guy's not Iraqi. He's a Lebanese Hezbollah operative, and his dialect is completely different. But it takes people at the agency a lot of skills to realize. So somebody who was Qais al-Khazali, who is now a very famous terrorist who's leading big things in Iraq, made these confessions. He was a member of the Mahdi militia, made the confession saying, well, that guy next to me in the cell is not Iraqi. And that's when everybody in the U.S. intelligence were like, oh, hold on, what are you talking about? He's not Iraqi, he's Lebanese. And once they found him, they got all the paperwork that was in his laptop, the IDs, perhaps the Iraqi government issued him ID cards, because it goes to show you how many bad individuals were in the Iraqi government who works for either Iran or Al-Qaeda or anybody. And he basically pulled all 300 individuals out of Iraq, took them to Iran. This is what became the EOD, explosive specialists among terrorists, got trained properly, went back to the fight. So not only you were getting attacked by Shia militias, you're getting attacked by Shia militias, Sunni militias. They're all attacking you the same style, which is the U.S. never looked into the data. They're all attacking you with EFB bombs. This should have resonate. The training was a mutual, and somebody did that. But back then, this was not a thing. This was a conspiracy theory. There was not a.
And this was it 05, 04, 05?
Yeah, 05 at the time. That's when things got really bad. That you started seeing Humvees get smashed, and you can't even see the Humvee anymore. And of course, back then, in my job as someone who was just collecting in the street level intelligence, trying to figure out the connections, was I would have sounded completely insane if I said, hey, I think Iran is behind training. They will look at you like funny, right? They'll be like,
that makes no sense. This just tells you how inept the leadership in the U.S. is. Essentially, we've got weeds and we're cutting off the top of the weeds, but we're not getting to the root of the problem, the roots. We're not killing it from the beginning. How the fuck did they not, how did they not realize, hey, we got to get to who's training these guys? And I'm asking, I mean, I kind of know the answer because of being around a lot of these inept people, but what were they telling you? And why were they not listening and saying, were you not telling, first of all, did you not feel like you could tell them and say, hey guys, we need to find out who's training these guys. That's where we stop it. That's where we pull the weed out from the roots instead of just chopping off the top and it's going to grow back. What were you seeing?
I think personally that the agents that were above me who were taking these intelligence to the leadership were just doing their job. They're just transferring the information. Sure. I believe the leadership refused to believe this was a solid intelligence, that this was something that we needed to consider. And as you know, everybody has an opinion in the military. Everybody has, they think they know it better than the guy on the ground. So that unfortunately, that gap of the ego that some of the leadership had that didn't want to believe the fact there got to be something uncommon here among LATACs, because they believed the guys who were fighting us were former Republican Guard officers. They're highly skilled, but they never looked into the materials that were used. The material that were used in the EFB bomb were absolutely not materials that were familiar with the old Iraqi military. A lot of this material, you have to understand, you have to go back through the 80s to figure out where Iraq contracted to buy weapons, explosive, and is the materials are similar to what that was provided at the time in the fight. And if you have dig deep into it, it's like doing a blood work to know what's going on through your body. All you have to do is test the material to see, oh, holy crap, Iraq never owned such a material. These copper metals, that is little plate that sits right under the EFB, this thing was not in Iraq at all. So where did it come from? Because if you look at it, it's just a copper little metal plate. But that thing right there didn't exist in Iraq. And you are not getting hit with an artillery 72 millim like artillery, or you're never getting ahead of that. This is not traditional. This is non-traditional. This is created and tested. So of course, Iran was always 10 steps ahead of the game. And my job at the time was really to protect the building, protect the 75 American advisors at all costs. The other hurdle that I had every single day is that this is the Ministry of Defense. This is where members of Congress, members of the U.S. government, U.S. leadership, like four-star generals, would come to meet with the minister. So how would I be able to guarantee their safety, walking them into the building where all terrorist organizations had groups inside, walking them in and out without any trouble? So at the time, the first protection, that's when I was the first Iraqi to be sent to counterterrorism first protection school. So I attended that.
And
I was
this
the
is where
first
we kind of
Iraqi
left off.
I'm
I was going
sorry?
to say this is kind of where we left off on the last episode.
So basically,
and
I
where
went to
people
that
were
school.
hanging. Yeah.
I went to that school to learn really how to protect my building, how to really deal with this. And at the time, as I made a little hallway, and the hallway was shut down from both, I would shut the whole entire building from this one hallway where U.S. leadership or U.S. delegations will go through. And I would just lock the door from both sides. I'll put soldiers in there. I'll lock them myself where no one has a key. Secret Service will call you. They'll send their dogs. They'll send all the guys. They'll secure the whole entire place. And then the real delegation, like the actual convoy will come in, and they'll get these individuals in, we'll count their time, and then within half an hour, they'll be out. And it used to be the scariest thing that I've ever done in my life is walk somebody who's extremely famous or important on the U.S. government into the second floor, because you couldn't tell them right behind this door, there is like the lines out there. There are lines out there behind this door that can eat you alive. And you couldn't really say that, but you just did what you did. And my job remained as the main of contact in the building. I remained doing what I was doing, what I was good at. And there was nothing in the world I was good at. no skills in the world I was good at. There was nothing I really was a master of. This was the only thing that I was good at, is how to collect intelligence, how to do this, and how to change the game and build a database of these individuals. And because I was doing it for 3 years and a half, this was not a deployment. I was there for years doing this. I got better off doing it, and I was more in details, providing valuable intelligence towards the end. That's why intelligence in my later years ended up going straight to the president, because it was highly valuable. It was important. The president needed to be aware of what he was dealing with, and it just kind of went from there. And my job remained.
I was just going to say, I mean, this is like a job that only someone like you, it sounds like, who could embed himself in the culture could really do. It reminds me of when we had Alana Duffy on, and she was saying, you know, white guys over there, like, no matter how big of a beard you want to grow, you can't really be embedded. In Middle Eastern culture, you have to be able to blend in, and someone like you can blend in with these people.
Yeah, and it's really like I remained as the person that just I remained doing what I was doing. There was a lot of situations where I could have eliminate somebody right at his position, and I would absolutely not bother them, leave them alone, because they weren't worth me of doing what I was doing. I was not exposing anything that I would do until somebody had built a suicide built inside of the building. And we were not aware of what he was doing. We didn't know it was a suicide built inside of that locker. All the information and the data we collected that the person was disappearing every 45 minutes. This was someone we were keeping an eye on, because we would know that if any American would be hurt, this is a very close threat. Yeah. And he was ahead of us. He was able to get a small amount of explosive every single day. He was trained to build a little built within the building, and doors like that or anything that I have would have not done anything. I mean, only God knows how many of them out there that I didn't know of, that I wasn't aware they were not in the system yet. So to me, this was a complete, basically a complete situation where I had to just remain and do what I do. So when my cover got exposed, end of 2007, that's when I was ordered to leave the building, and I decided not to leave the building. I decided that this was my job. I'm not going anywhere, and I won't go sit in the base doing nothing. And I'm in the building anyway, that nothing would happen to me. I'm a soldier. They can't really come within my circle. I have enough people protecting me. And that's when they started going after anybody I would talk to. So I had one of my sources and teammates left the building, and he was assassinated 14 minutes after he left the building.
See, and that's where
he was out of it in 6 months. He was stuck in there. The moment he walked out, they assassinated him and killed him. And they started playing the emotional side, knowing that I'm not just an intelligent asset. I'm a command sergeant major in the military. I had a PSD team full of highly trained by the U.S. military that was going to protect me around my circle. So they figured they will do the emotional side and kill anybody that I know around me until they figure out a way to psychologically pressure me to leave, because I was causing them more damage sitting in there. And towards the end, it was just an emotional, it was, you had to make a decision, information or lives. And it was hard that the information you were getting, it was saving lives. It was making a difference. And then also at the same time, they knew who you are. They know if somehow you're collecting to the US government, and they want to stop you any way as possible. So you're just going to have to make a decision what you're going to do. And at that time, I was lost. This was my career. I was a 5-year soldier that been at war for 5 years. This is what I was doing every single day. And all of a sudden you're telling me, hey, you got to walk out of this and just go start a whole new life. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. It was, believe me or not, to this day, that walking out of the building, probably the hardest thing I ever done in my life, the hardest. Witnessing explosions, suicide bombers, walking 5 feet away from the most dangerous Al-Qaeda members in Iraq, all of that didn't shake me a bit, man. All of that was just part of my environment. But telling me to take that uniform and walk out of there and your job is over, after 5 years, every single day you were doing this, it was probably the hardest thing I ever dealt with in my life. The feelings and the what was going on through my heart and my brain, it was just hard, man. I felt like I was grabbing something and I just didn't want to let go. And it was hard to leave that night. You know, I left around evening. Everything was fine in the MOD. Everything looked the same. And I just told the people, I'm stepping out to go to the DFAC. I'll be back in 5 minutes. And
did the U.S. ever so they didn't know you were leaving? You didn't know you were
the U.S. did. The U.S.
So
the intelligence, the U.S. intelligence, everybody in the U.S. side knew. Okay. They wanted me to leave 6 months prior for my safety. Perhaps they didn't want me to just lose my life being in there. They wanted me to leave. They said, listen, it's not about information anymore. It's about your life. Safety comes first. We have made promises to previous agents that we would keep you alive. We'll not get you in any harm. So they cared about my life. They didn't want me to get killed. So at the end of the day, they said, you're going to die anyway. Hey, you're going to get killed. They're going to do something to kill you. They're going to eliminate you. If this suicide bolt you were able to stop, the next one you won't be able to stop. Eventually they thought someone's just going to walk into MOD and hug me and blows up and we're done. Sure. And at the time when I left, it was hard, man. It was just difficult that I didn't want to let go. And when I walked out of there, it was if you have asked me anything that day to stay in there, I would have done it. And I just couldn't, you know, it was hard. And, you know, never got emotional, never cried. I cried leaving out of that gate, man. I cried like walking out there, pretending that I'll be back in 5 minutes and it's my normal day. And it was the last time I ever saw every single face that was in my life in that war for 5 years, that was doing me a favor, that was fighting in my side. And I felt that in order not to get them killed, I'm the target. And if I walk away, all of that walks away with me. So I walked out and went to a U.S. base nearby, which I had ID cards and everything where I can enter any U.S. base at the time. And I sat for a few months in that base waiting for my American paperwork to finish and to leave the country. And I left the country within a few months. And it was the most difficult thing, man. You know, imagine you being at a 5 year war and all of a sudden you're not only leaving your job and your environment, you're leaving your whole entire home, your whole entire country, people you knew, you grew up seeing every single day. And then all of a sudden your whole entire life just got deleted, right-clicked and deleted. You didn't exist and you left the country. And I didn't know what was I coming to here, you know, in the plane, what's America was like. I had no idea about any of that. So I left in July of 2008 and that was it. That was my last time. I took my last look out of that window, out of the plane, and something in my heart just told me that you will never see this place again.
Sure. Oh yeah. Where did they end up? Where's the first place you went into, and what'd you start doing when you got to the States, man?
So of course I made it to Washington, D.C.
Is that where the plane ticket was? It ended in Washington, D.C.?
No, the plane ticket was actually to JFK. Okay. And as soon as I landed in JFK, you know, there was an intelligence officer waiting for me at the airport. And when I got out of JFK, you know, I don't know if you've been around JFK airport, right? Have you? Yeah. It's a really shitty airport, by the way. And when I got out, I'm like, really? That's all America? That's literally what we were promised? Like, look at the shitty place. Look at the walls. Like, I'm like, we got better infrastructure in the gray zone than this crap. So then I realized it was just JFK. JFK airport wasn't as nice.
They're both which one? They fixed up one of them. Which one was it?
LaGuardia, they did. I was just going to say, JFK is not even as bad as that is, but yeah.
Yeah, everything in JFK was just didn't look right. And I got off. And I looked and I was like, shit, right? Probably this is all movies. This is the real America, right? Hey, JFK, look at that wall full of piss and homeless people. I'm like, what is this? And when I got out, the intelligence officer was waiting for me outside. And it was good to see him for the first time because the last time I've seen him was 2005. And got out and he drove me to a place in Albany, New York. And I sat there for about 3 days. and then they put me on the train to go stay with somebody in DC who I also worked with. And I end up going to DC, and the first 13 days of my that I arrived, which I had nothing else to do in the world. I mean, imagine you go from being a war zone for 5 years every single day, being attacked, to looking at the United States that's completely silent and quiet, and you don't see people. There's nothing going on the road. It was just a weird environment. I didn't know how to react to it. And at the time, the intelligence officer I was staying with was like, hey, why don't you just get on the bus and go to the Smithsonian's, go look at all the museums and everything. And for the first 13 days, I would either go to Arlington Cemetery, where I had friends that are buried there, figure out where they were buried or where they are. And after that, I would go to the museums, go wander around. And it took me just about a few months to really figure out how to get out of depression, because I got extremely depressed, that I came from my environment to this environment and I didn't know how to behave. So I went through really 8 months of nothing but a depressed environment. I didn't know how to survive.
But you got out. You weren't just sitting in a room feeling depressed.
I got out.
See, that's honestly, that's great material right there, buddy. That's good for even veterans coming back. Hey, don't sit in your room feeling bad for yourself. Get out, just go do something. And that's honestly, if anything you say today, that is hugely important for veterans and people that go through depression to hear.
Indeed.
Like, get off your ass and exactly. No, keep going though. That's awesome.
People will probably want to hear. I was like, I'm sitting here, not doing anything. I literally just stopped walking, man. I went out. I went to the Smithsonian's. I went to Arlington Cemetery. I saw my friends where I kind of went through everything to see like what America's like. I didn't know how to cross the street. I actually didn't know there was a sign that you have to see people walk in. I would have crossed from anywhere. People would scream at me.
That's Baghdad. That's Iraq. That's all. You don't realize that's how it is, man.
Right? I was like, what do you mean that I have to wait? I'm like, I don't have to wait.
Technically, though, New York City, I mean, no one waits for a sign.
Yeah, New York City is a whole wild thing. I mean, truly, in New York City, it's a different animal. But I was like, Washington, D.C. was really different. And I would get into the train and figure things out. And I used to be terrified. I mean, look at this guy who fought terrorists all his life. The most terrifying thing is getting lost on the train, because I don't know where the hell to get off. And I would just get used to my environment. And it took me 8 months. And then I was like, you're not going back to Iraq. Your life, it's going to be the same. And this is it. This is your new environment. You got to get used to it. And it took me a little bit, and then I figured it out, and I started working for a private contractor and doing training for the U.S. military.
Cool.
If we can, I want to get into that, but I think people might want to know, like, how did you get out of that depression? Because I'm sure some people are listening and they're in a new environment, or they're coming back from combat and they're in the same position you were in. Like, what are some tips to people to get out of that depression?
Honestly, it was to focus on other things. That's what it is. My whole focus for 5 years wasn't at war, and there was no more war. So the war came to me, became within inside of myself. So I was like, well, now I got to figure out a way to focus on other things. So I decided to get out and focus on how I'm going to start a new life. How am I going to get a job? How am I going to make a resume? I didn't know how to make a resume. I had to actually find a volunteer from Catholic Charity to make a resume, end up being my best friend. And it really just found people that are willing to help. And at the time, Iraqi refugees was not a thing. It was like a new thing. People will see you're from Iraq, you speak perfect English, you don't seem like you need help, but people don't realize you've only been in the country for about a few days. And that's when I started really wondering about things, right? I started figuring out how to get a driver license, wait for my social security to arrive and everything, get a resume. And out of nothing, I actually decided to go get a random job, right? I decided to go find jobs, and people will look at your resume, they'll look at you. You speak a perfect English, but you were not in the country in the last month. You were new to the country. So it was just weird for people. They didn't know how to react. And Perhaps at the time I just didn't know. I was just learning things in the daily basis. And I got a little bike. I would go in a bicycle every single day, and then I bought a car, and then I started moving around. And slowly, truly, I would just moving around. I would just go to random restaurants, random places. I'll talk to people, and I found people who connect with my environment, who had a previous military background or something, and somehow I started focusing on other things. I started meeting people and starting a whole entire new life. And I pretty much end up, doing the training, which what really put me back into my environment. I started doing like training military advisors who were going back to work with the Iraqi military or PSYOP or civil affairs or public affairs guys. And I started going back to the bases, seeing really what I can offer to help people who are going back overseas. And I started doing that for a while. I found a lot of contracting jobs that if I wanted to go back to Iraq as a civilian, but unfortunately I was very familiar face in Iraq, so I couldn't really do that. So I had no option. I had to start my new life in the United States, and I had to figure out a way to forget everything that happened. And I just went on with it, and that's what I did.
That's cool.
Did you forget, or did you just accept? Because I know you didn't forget. Obviously, we're talking about it, so you didn't forget. But was it more of trying not to remember it, or just like, okay, this happened, that's a chapter, let's close it, let's move on to a new chapter? It's going to be there if I need to open up and reread that chapter again, but I'm closing that chapter and now I'm going to start a new chapter instead of just, I got to forget it. Or did you just
tell you the truth? I'll lie to you if I tell you nobody can forget.
Yeah,
that,
you can't
right?
forget that. Yeah.
I just kind of figured out I had no options. I can't go back to Iraq. I can't, even though there are jobs to go, but I couldn't do it. That's it. I'm a burned card that cannot ever come back. That, that I could be executed right in federal court if I go back. I'm communicating with foreign intelligence and Iraqi law. This is treason. So I just looked at it. I was like, okay, well, for me is I have to move to the next level, regardless how hard it was. It was extremely hard to make that move. It took me 2 years of being depressed. It took me 8 months of I didn't want to do anything. But then at the end, I was like, I got no option. I got to move on. Life is moving on, and I got to figure out how to do things. And I went from, doing something for 5 years to actually learning very basic life skills, how to make a resume, how to cross the street, how to really make eggs. I just really went on to learning how to survive and how to just communicate with people, and slowly I started integrating into the U.S. culture. And now, a lot of people would go where their own people are, where a lot of Iraqis are. I didn't. I actually just started to challenge myself and can connect with American culture and understand how things works. And at the time, everything was difficult. Everything, you just didn't know how. There was no Google much at the time. There was no, you can search things on the internet. There's all these mappings. So one of the first thing that I felt it was life or death for me, that I couldn't do anything without it, was actually having a GPS. Because how else would I know how to get back? If I drive out to go to a restaurant, I don't know how to get back to my house. So
people don't remember the MapQuest either. You just have to print shit off and you get directions.
Bro, it was horrible. Like I was terrified, right? I went to the same restaurants for about 3 months. Because it was only about a mile from my house. I went there, the same place, Turkish restaurant. They're like, hey man, do you have anybody that cooks for you at home or something? Like, you're here every day. I'm like, I that's as far as I can go. And someone said, hey, if you go, there's a place called Radio Shack. And go to Radio Shack. They sell this high technology GPS, and you just flip the address, and it takes you back. And I'm like on it. And at the time, this was like a $600 to $300 investment. I went there, and I literally went to the place, and the guy was helping me out. I pulled like $10,000 from my pocket cash, and he looked at me. He's like, "Whoa!" And I was like, "I need the best one." And he was like, this one right here is like $600. And I gave him the cash, took it, and installed it in my car. And that's when life was like different. you know?
Wow, that guy
'Cause I would
definitely
look up-
thought you were a drug dealer or something.
He did. He was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're a baller." That's what he said. Literally, I never forget. And he thought I was a drug dealer. And I was like, "This is it." And he didn't know the blood and sweat that I put for that money. Truly.
Yeah,
And then-
no, for sure. What?
Yeah.
What were you saying, Chris?
No, I was just, did the agency, or I mean, did they help with all that, getting you a place to stay, getting you a
man.
job?
Look at that. It was
Fucking
like the
horse
first-
shit. That's such bullshit.
It was
man.
like the first week. Here's how to survive and not get killed. And I will never forget. Like, the first month, was a learning experience. One of the things I'm really thankful for is that when I landed in JFK, I was being chased in Iraq for 5 years. I was all scared of everything, right?
Sure.
I'll look left and right. I'll look at every single box that's on the side of the road. I will look at every single person that looks like me, and we cause an eye contact. I was just not normal in a way. And as soon as I got out of JFK and I got on the car, I'm looking right in front of me, and I'm looking, it's a female police officer. And he saw that I was just staring at her, right? And I'm looking at her in the face, and I'm like, it's a woman. And she got a gun, and she's just talking to somebody she pulled over. And I just kind of shake my head. I'm like, wow, you should have never seen a woman police officer before. That's my first time, And he looked at me and he said, look, he goes, if they ever pull you over, ever, a police pulls you over, stops you, talk to you, whatever, you do not do anything. You do not run. You're not being chased. And all you answer is, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And that's all you're going to do. That's all you need to do. And I'll never forget. I was like, well, what if they work for the bad guys? Like, no, look, it's not, this environment is no longer there. These are good people. And I was like, okay, if they stop me, I'll just answer, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. I'll not say anything else. And truly, that was the best thing I ever had, because if I was pulled by a police officer and things were not right with me and I didn't feel right, I would have probably ran away, and it would have been the worst car chase in the country, and I would end up getting killed. And
well, I mean, from your experience too, you did actually have an altercation. And if people don't listen, go back and listen to our first episode with you, they can hear what happened when that. And so I bet your first instinct would be to like, holy shit, I got to get out of here, because I don't want to go be tortured into jail again.
And it was just a really messed up behavior, because you're coming from a different environment. I mean, literally the moment I get out, before I see the police officer, I see a Muslim looking man with a long beard. And I didn't know that was normal in New York, right? I didn't know that was like in America, that was normal. And I see the guy and I'm like, here they are. They were ahead of me, like shit. They made it ahead of me. And I'm literally, I don't have anything. I have just my luggage, and I'm literally getting ready to take my luggage so I could smash it in his face in case something happened. And then I'm looking at him. He just passed by me. And I'm looking at him like, is that a normal thing here? I didn't know. And when I got out, he was like, dude, we got all kind of people here in America. Do not engage anybody. No one's after you. And no one knows who you are. Just go move on in your life. And truly, that's what my figuration was. I was trying to figure out how to survive, how to walk around, how to talk to people, how to communicate as a normal human being and not be scared or be nervous or anything like that. And
I was just going to say, I mean, it makes sense. I think everything we're all in our own bubble. It's all learned behavior. It's the same thing as if you go to a shelter and you see a dog that's abused, and they don't want you to go up and pet them, because they're used to someone abusing them. They're not used to humans being friendly with them. So I think we're much more alike to that than we may realize. I do want to make sure that we get into what you were saying earlier before I asked you that question about getting out of your depression, the job that you ended up doing on a more permanent basis when you came back.
Yeah, I mean, I end up just really figuring things on my own. I was just challenging things as I was going. And as soon as I really, it was a good moment for me to really just realize what I have been through and where I was at that point, and where I came from, and how far. And it was a good moment for myself to sit with myself and figure things out, to process everything. Because for 5 years, you didn't have time to process everything you went through. I never got emotional over my soldiers getting killed. I never got the time to think about where people are, right? And I just thought about it, and I was like, here I am, I'm alive, I'm in the United States. I am living free. I can do whatever I want. I can go eat eggs at 2 o'clock in the morning at IHOP and not worry about someone shooting me, and there's no curfew. And just kind of started looking into the positive side. And I'm like, I started processing things, and I started going through my pictures and everything, and just realizing how many people I've lost. And here I am, I'm still here. And a lot of people are gone. A lot of people were just a date. This was their death date, and life ended right in there. And here I am, I made it. So it was a really rewarding experience to feel that you're free. It took you years of your life fighting to be free and be able to do things. And truly, it was a blessing. It was a good feeling.
So
the next good feeling I had, it was when I got my citizenship in 2017, and I went to, I went to, getting my citizenship and seeing everybody that was there with me, and to kind of see like where you come from, everything you went through. And finally, once I got my citizenship, that's when nobody in the world will be able to touch me anymore. That's it. Nobody could. There's no way I could be sent back to Iraq. There was nothing that nobody. I was just invisible. To me, I'm like holding that U.S. passport, and I'm like, for every bad guy that ever came after me, good luck if you can make it here.
Yeah.
It's
but
done.
Back to what I was asking, what job did you end up doing more permanently?
In the military? Oh, so I end up working as basically an advisor, like a PSYOP advisor. So my job was to train every single advisor that would go do exactly what these advisors did in the MOD. So my job was to put them in these environments and teach them the dynamics before they go deploy. So when they get there, they're not lost. They're already trained how to protect themselves. They're trained to notice if there's anything not right and protect themselves. And I did a lot of different things. I did PSYOP, civil affairs. I did safety, how to deal with a certain culture. I did everything. Perhaps I even taught them how to eat with Iraqis when they get invited over with a bunch of Iraqis, how to eat properly, how to understand the culture, how to communicate, how to build the relationships between them and Iraqis that they're going to be working with. And that's literally what I did, is mostly culture, psychological aspects. And I did that as a contractor. So I worked for private companies.
Sure.
And, I worked for Mobius Industry, which is pretty big,Ograph Technology, all these big guys that are making really good money. And I was just a great asset sitting, doing nothing with my life. And they're like, oh, we'll just we can take this guy. We can auction him to the military saying, look who we got here, and make tons of money. And I was making like $20 an hour. Right. And I thought this was a lot of money. I was like, wow, I'm rich, making $20 an hour. Well, they were making like 100,000.
Yeah, I know. I was like, wait a second. They're only paying. I was going to ask you, those sons of bitches, man. People with your skill set, I mean, you're making easily. Now that there are some that I knew were making $800, $900, a day. Now some of them would have to get it, and that because
and it truly, I didn't know, right? I didn't know at the time like what these are and contracts are. I thought these were the military, and I'm like, oh, you're not the military, you're civilians. You're just making money. They contract and do everything. To me, honestly, I was not doing this for the money. I felt I was obligated to hand this thing over before this guy gets off on the plane and go to this environment. I'm like, I'm obligated to share this. And whether I was getting paid or not, I was just going to go and teach this person how to get ready for this environment. And I did it for the fact is I just wanted to help. And it was giving me a purpose to stay in the fight. And later on, I kind of felt like, look, years later, I was like, hey, this is not fair that I'm sharing all this information for nothing. And somebody's buying Ferraris and nice houses and have a nice life using my expertise. So I hanged my hat in Fort Bragg about a year and 2 months, about really 14 months ago. I kind of just felt I was done with that world. I have done 12 years of service of training people after my 5 years of fight. I was like, this is total of 16, 17 years of doing something and giving back. I'm not getting any benefits out of this. I'm not walking away with anything. And psychologically, I had the brain tumor. I was going through health issues. And I was like, this is it for me to walk away. I'm just going to go focus on myself and what I want to do, because this guy never was able to dream about what they want to do, right? I was just doing this every single day for years. So I was like, this time I got to do things for me. I did already. The war is over. Iraq's change. Afghanistan was pretty much almost was going to end anyway. And I was like, well, this won't be here anyway. And regardless, I can still work there, I can still do what I do with the SF units that are always doing these kind of things. But I was like, I'm done. I'm just gonna move on and find a new environment. And that's when I created my company, the Black Side Show, and started really educating for vets, which I'm actually found a new purpose is working with vets, showing them the positive impact of what they did in Iraq. Because the media, anybody don't share that with them. People only show them the negative side of the invasion of Iraq. They show them, we just went there and destroyed the country. They don't tell them there's a whole new generation of Iraqis that are able to stand up to Iran. They're able to fight. They're able to stand to Iran's face. And there are a new generation of people that are completely way better enhanced to human beings, better than my generation, better than my parents' generation. And this is where Iraq stands today. This is what Iran is no longer comfortable, even though there's no U.S. presence in Iraq, because there's a new generation that grew up around the American soldier that's given Iran hell. And this is the positive side. And my job is to tell these veterans to chin up and be proud of this change, because it takes time. A lot of people think change comes right away. The change you were part of in Iraq back in 2003 to 2008, it didn't show in 2010 because these people were still young, still playing on the street. It showed in 2019 when they were able to liberate Mosul, kick ISIS out on their own. And now you have all this new generation. In 2019, we had the biggest protest in our history against Iran. That's the year Qasem Soleimani got airstriked in Iraq. Qasem Soleimani was coming to Iraq to actually deal with these people, and he ended up getting airstrike. So there's a lot of details that goes to the positive impact of these wars. Not every story is negative. There's a lot of good stories, good positive impact these American soldiers were able to make in Iraq, and I'm obligated to share that with them. And I make sure I do that through my show every single day. I tell stories, I prove it with evidence. And right now, the only mission that keeps me in this is this lawsuit against Iran on behalf of Gold Star families. And I am obligated and determined to prove Iran guilty in the court of law and get all these families of Gold Star families and injured vets reimbursed off of Iranian money. If I do that, I could feel I have won my war, because I didn't only go after their operatives in Iraq. Now I have went after their money. So I'll feel like I'll have the feeling like an IRS agent going after the Ayatollah, right? Taking his money out. So it would give me a complete feeling that I won the war. I didn't lose anything. I lost people. But to me, if I can get their money to go towards the U.S. soldiers who lost their lives in Iraq and get their families or their kids to have a better life, I think how much can I be victorious? How much can I win more than that? And I'm determined, and this is my mission today, that I prove Iran guilty, win the case. And as I said to the lawyers, as to me, it's personal. I was brought to this, I was like, I don't care how much I was going to get paid. I don't care how much you're going to make money. To me, is I'm going to provide you all the evidence you got. The only thing I demand is you win the case and these soldiers go home happy. And if I can do that, I believe I can do anything in my life. So I'm going to win this case, and I'm determined to do it. And I collected every single evidence like little crumbs out of a milk cereal, and then just picked them up, put them all together, build a file, and I'm going to win it. And that will be my last touch with Iran and its operative. And I don't know what else I can take from them. The only thing I can take from them is their clothes, and that's it.
Well, dude, it's good outlook. And I think, people should learn from your outlook, and learning that you kept moving forward. You kept, even when it got down and you got out of that element. I understand. I do. I think I understand somewhat of being overseas for 10 years. Granted, I got to come home and reacclimate. This is home, but I do understand of losing a sense of purpose once you leave. And you found other purpose. And that's what we always tell veterans. You set goals, set another goal, find another purpose. Don't just be sedentary, and you didn't. And to me, that is the hugest thing I think you bring to this episode, is that you just showed again, as we always preach on this, and other veterans have preached, and you've seen it, you've been there, done that, that if you're getting depressed, don't be sedentary. Keep finding purpose. Even if you think it's mundane or you think it's something that is minuscule, still those baby steps are going to help you get out of that depression, and you're going to be successful. And regardless of how much money you make, I don't think that deviates, that determines success.
It's a purpose.
You're successful, and you had every right in the world to not be successful because of what you went through. So and like I said, I just think it's still amazing. Just your mindset to this day, and you're still trying to help. And I love that you're still trying to beat Iran as well. Yeah,
anything is possible. People have to look. I was just a young Iraqi wandering around Iraq, and don't know what I was doing, and here I am in 2016 wandering around doing speaking events with Chris Pirano.
Hey, look at that. And that's how actually you and I got to know each other, was the book.
Possible.
And actually I was like, this is guy, I can't remember who it was, but I remember I gave your name to somebody and said, hey, this guy's going to start speaking. You need to have him.
Yeah.
And this is when you first started. I think that was like 5-6 years ago. It was like in 2016 or 17, something like that. But
I started literally going, slow, doing things. And, I when I attended your event in Raleigh, North Carolina,
that was a long time
I
ago.
was getting booked out there, and I was like, you know what? I shouldn't be afraid to get on stage and do what I do. And I started doing this, taking it more seriously, doing training, learning how really speaking in public is. It was a whole science and psychological aspect behind it. And I'm happy here I am 7 years later. I'm still speaking. I just did an event in Florida, in Navarre at the base. And now I'm like used to it. And I feel that I'm sharing my story. I'm still doing, here I am 7 years later. I'm still selling my books. I'm still doing speaking events. I'm still keeping what I did in Iraq alive. And I think this part of me will always be there, right? This is part of my life. I always say this, like, I wasn't this G.I. Joe guy or whatever it is that I did. I was just an average guy that was put in the wrong environment. And, I feel like it's kind of hard now. It's just being regular me. And I'm talking about this guy for 5 years that went doing crazy things. And I think that the more challenge you have in your life, it's the more of your skills that will come out.
That's well said, man. We're wrapping things up here, but I wanted to ask if you could just give real quick your response to the protests going on right now in Iran over women who no longer want to wear the hijab. They're burning them. Iran shutting down the internet, shutting down all exposure of this. But people are seeing videos because of Twitter and things like that, that there are Iranians out there that are fed up with it. They're fed up with the tyranny over it.
I mean, look, man, religious police in any country, it's a nasty force that need to be eliminated. I give a props to Saudi Arabia for eliminating the religious police, because Mohammed bin Salman, the new prince, did not want to put up with any of that stuff, because religion and freedom don't work together.
I agree.
Truly, they just don't work together. America has been through this experience. Keep religious people where they are, and you'll be happy, because they belong in church, in a mosque, in a synagogue, and that's where they belong. They don't belong in telling people what to do. And this is something right now. Iran is the last Islamic state in the world that is doing this kind of law enforcement on people. I'll tell you this, that the truth from someone who battled Iran all his life, collecting on them for 5 years. This change in Iraq this change in Iran is impossible, because the only way you can make this possible if somebody, someone with solid steel balls will drop weapons to these people so they can really defend themselves against this regime. Because right now they're dealing with the Revolutionary Guards, who are extremely vicious. And I've seen these people, they're going to kill every single citizen in Iran before they even move a hair about anybody. They will just, they've been through this. You have to know, protests blew up in Iran in 2011, 2012. What they did, they waited for everything to calm down, and then they picked up all the people that were in charge of these protests, executed them, and no one knew where they went. So Iran's been through this. Iran knows how to deal with this. The only way you can make a difference is you cannot fight somebody without a gun. You're dealing with a radical government who's extremely armed, who has an army and has a Revolutionary Guard, and you're fighting them with nothing. We did this in Iraq in 2019 and end up shooting people in the face. They end up eliminating every single leader. And where's the protest today? It's gone. So the only difference, I know a lot of people are trying to show support. I know the world is trying to stand with the Iranians. Iran doesn't care what you do. You can go on Instagram and make the stand with Iran, and all the actors and actresses were saying Zan Zendagi Azadi, stand with Iran. It doesn't work. The only thing works is 4 magazines, AK-47, and that's when you really start hearing good music, because that's when you could really fight for your freedom. That's when you can liberate yourself, because the aggressor that's coming at you does not understand something called human rights, don't know what that means. So the only thing that could really change the game in Iran right now is, I hate saying it this way, the only thing that could change it in Iran is a good, solid politician that can drop guns from the top of the skies, and these protesters can open that little container and take care of business. That's the only way. We did it in Libya. We did it in Syria. We did it in a lot of countries. We can absolutely do it in Iran, but it's going to be who is really going to be willing to do that, because our politics and our things are a lot different today than they were years ago. And I don't know who is going to do it, but I can tell you, man, Iran will kill every single citizen before they even move that regime. That regime is not going anywhere. And the only way that regime is going to go away is in a box, in a death box.
And you're right, man. And I if it happens and there's a war there again, I've been in Libya, I've been in back to Iraq, I've been in Yemen. After Yemen, if it happens, it turns it to a third world country, because we did that to Libya. I was there. We destroyed it. Syria, we've pretty much destroyed. Yep. We've left. So it's like they got war. There's not going to change. You're spot on, dude. You can stand all you want, hashtag it all you want on your L-shaped couch, all you want, Americans. Nothing's going to change. But if we have a war there too, and we are involved with it, and we help with it, like we were in Libya, like we were in Syria, like we were in Yemen, we'll destroy that nation. It'll turn into a third world country, like we did with Libya, like we did with Syria, like Assad. Even though Assad's hanging on, he's still trying to hang on, and Yemen is gone. I mean, Sana'a is not the Sana'a that I know when I was there, when I used to get Kentucky Fried Chicken, because they had a Kentucky Fried Chicken in Sana'a. But so it's really there's really a no win scenario, aside from just going back to the Stone Age and starting back from scratch. But that's up to the Iranians. That is completely up to the Iranians, but he's right. I hate to tell you, folks, Hamody's right. They will kill and execute, and they will get their power back, because that's what they do. And you
just look at the fact that Iran is keeping its interest in Syria and Yemen and everywhere by using force, by pumping guns and fighters all over that, and training and everything they do. The only way back to really cause that disturbance, same disturbance they cause in other countries, is to do it in their own country. And I know that the Free Iranians want that help, but who's really going to be willing to stand up to the Iranian regime that could absolutely say, I don't care what you're going to do, here's guns, go fight for your freedom, I don't care what Iran responds. That's what's going to take right now. So I do believe in my heart that, to answer your questions, that the free Iranians that are fighting for freedom today, so is the free Iraqis who are fighting to get rid of the Iranian influence, so is this people in Syria, so is the people in Yemen, so is all of these people are hoping that 224, somebody's going to come over, is going to make a very bold decision and give him that. They're hoping that the only place things like that can come from, or that kind of Christmas gifts could come from, is the United States, America. And everybody's hoping. Everybody is hoping for, I don't want to mention politics in your show or anything, everybody's hoping for someone else's comeback, right? They're always like, oh, either this guy comes back to power, either we get the new guy who sounds pretty crazy and he might be able to actually do that kind of thing. So it truly, all that's going to be determined how far Iran would go with how U.S. election will go. So I make a joke against Iranian operatives who threaten me every single day in social media. I always say, hey man, don't get too comfortable. 224 is getting close. And they know, they trust me. They know that, like 224 could be something new, that we could have some crazy dude comes in all of a sudden and he's going to drop these containers and he's not going to be afraid to do so. And, the private industry would love to do that. So We'll see.
And the issue is too, and we'll wrap things up here. And I guess this
Yeah.
will
Oh
be the
shit.
last political.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize how late. Yeah.
Yeah,
we
but
got
this will be the last, because we do try to stay apolitical here, but at the same time, politics does play into all this. And I guess the one political statement I'll make is I think a lot of guys who have been on the show, who've been in combat, would say America can't be the world police. And also at the same time, when you have a current president who has said on record that there is absolutely no limit to what he's going to spend in Ukraine, how much more money could we spend in every other single country when we're currently going through a recession in this country? People are losing their jobs. People are paying astronomical prices for healthcare. And I just think this thirst for America to be the world police is kind of gone from a lot of people, understandably so, when they see what our own country is going through.
And
I'll say one last thing. So before you go, a lot of people, my thinking is differently because of what I've been through. So I might say things that are not going to sound pretty clear. Like people may think, oh my God, he doesn't agree or disagree. Us being the world police, man, it's still not a negative thing as we think it is, because there are people like Iran. No one is able to really stand up to them in the whole entire planet. So that sometimes you have to be the bad guy to stand up to another bad guy.
But which is why it becomes, I think, a balancing act of like, what is our presence going to be in Ukraine? What is our presence going to be in Iran? And, I think the more libertarian view of let's get out of everywhere, that's extreme as well. That's also impossible to do when you are America. But I think the other extreme of, as I said, current president saying on record, there's no limits to what we're going to spend in Ukraine. That's also unsustainable.
Yeah, I mean, also think of all these countries that might be a rival to us, whether it's all these major countries, whether it's have the same exact military power. All of these countries are not trying to have the best interest for us. We might sound the evil that we are trying to be in their business, but believe it or not, any of these countries, if they get the opportunity to be in the middle of our business, they will, because they have been, and they have done it way back in the day, and they still doing it. And I know psychologically they do manipulate the U.S. public to pressure its government. But look, when it comes to Russia, when it comes to China, when it comes to all these countries, we might have a good relationship with them, but it doesn't mean these people, if they get the opportunity for us to be weak or not pay attention to what we're doing and worry about our internal affairs and everything, trust me, these guys will be in Syria, they'll be all over Iraq, they'll be all over all of these countries, and they will do exactly the same role that we're doing right now in the Middle East or anywhere in the world. So for that, our politics has been this way our whole entire life. And we are always going to be always in everyone's business, because there is no guarantee if they get stronger, they will not be in our business.
It's just not sustainable, buddy. That's the issue. It's just not monetary. We're sacrificing my kids' future by putting all this money where it's just not sustainable. We spent too much, and we don't have the infrastructure like we used to, because we depend on. I know we're getting into politics now. Shit, I'm getting off topic. But we're getting.
He's gonna have to cut that off.
But it's like cheating. I mean, it's like because we don't produce our own shit anymore. That was the biggest.
It's true.
That's the issue.
I do see. I genuinely see, as an outsider, both of your sides, right? Because I remember actually years ago I had the same conversation with Jack Murphy, and I was a big Ron Paul supporter, and Ron Paul was very much let's get out of everywhere. And I remember what he said to me still resonates with me, that if we were to leave all these countries that we have a presence in, you don't think China's going to move there? You don't think China's going to have military bases? So I think it becomes the balancing act of, all right, we have to have a presence in these places, but how much and how severe, and how much do we sacrifice of our own federal infrastructure? And that's always going to be a question. And I agree with Hamody. Like, we're always going to have a presence all over the globe. And in some cases, we need to. So with that, definitely check out the Black Site Show, as you were talking about before. Hammy does an awesome podcast. The Terrorist Whisperer, the story of the pro-American, is the book that is still available, which as well as the documentary. And at the _terrorist _whisperer on Instagram, theterroristwhisperer.com. And I'm sure if people want to book you as a speaker, they could probably contact you right through there.
Do you do your own, or are you at the speaking bureau?
So actually, you could buy the books from anywhere, but it's preferred to buy them from my website, theterroristwhisperer.com, and that's where you can buy. They come autographed for the same price, so you can buy them there, and that's where I sell all my books on my own website. because I learned a lot about capitalism while being in the United States.
What about speaking? How do they get a hold of you for speaking events?
Speaking, you could just send me an email through my website. Actually, you could go there, send me an email. I speak all the time, and this is what I do. And now my speaking is not only for educational purposes, also for entertainment in a way. So
it's motivational. You're a motivational speaker, dude. You just say what you are now. You become
motivational.
Into the motivational speaker category. You're and look at that. When he does smile, he actually has a decent fucking smile. Look at that. No, you're a good man, brother. And I appreciate you coming back on and
my pleasure.
Dealing with, and our paths will cross again, like personally soon. And we're going to drink some Tano vodka together. I'm your drinking. Definitely. So just, all right. And maybe we'll get some absinthe again. No, I've never done that. What am I talking about? I don't do that kind of stuff. Wait, yes, I do.
But yeah,
I know you've been clean. It's all good.
This has been awesome. And I know people were really looking forward to part 2 of this. So this definitely did not disappoint. And you know what I will say, man, I think it's very important that people hear this perspective from you because to be fair, we've had so many people on the show and they all have the experience, but so many guys who have come back from combat and said, Iraq was a mistake. We shouldn't have been there. Nothing good came of it. So I do think it's important to have you on to counter that because you have the experience and it's not that they're right or you're right. You both have the experience to demonstrate why you can make that argument.
And what you said today made me feel good, dude. I spent, I went off and on in Iraq for 10 years. I mean, if you want to count 5-6 years. And for me, think back and I was like, God, what the fuck were we there for? But you just saying that today has helped me. So if you didn't help anybody, you at least helped me today. And I appreciate
my pleasure.
Because that makes me feel, okay, you're right, man. I forgot about that. You lose perspective on why we were there. We think of the bigger picture because God dang it, we're so immersed in this freaking media culture of here in the United States.
Because you watch too much.
I don't watch it anymore. I say, oh, damn it, I don't watch it anymore. But I'm just getting too old, man. But he's right. Stop watching all the news. I stopped watching it. I don't do it. But what you said, no, I had forgotten. I had forgotten
and before we close that, make sure you ask someone who experienced something versus someone who's reporting on it. It's very simple.
Well said. And that means that, okay, guys, it's not a white supremacist symbol. I just want to let you know. That means okay for all you MSNBC watchers and
listeners.
That's
a spot on in the military.
That's a spot on, yeah. Yep. Or
dude, it's so crazy that it's so crazy that you bring that up. I don't know if I can get into it. It would be a whole nother story, but I don't know if you heard about Pat Miletich. There was a picture that went around of him, I guess, on January 6th. And there was a guy next to him doing that. They're trying to I heard this from Pat's co-host.
There's stories everywhere. It's all good.
Yeah, I heard this from Jeffrey, either way, his co-host, who's a black guy. You know what I mean? And they were saying there was a picture of this, and they were connecting Pat Miletich with white supremacy, which obviously is not. It's funny that you.
I'm a Mexican white supremacist for all you left wingers out there. Give me a freaking break. This means okay. That's all it means. Spot on. Got it. Or we'll just do this. How about this? We'll just do this. Hamody, you're a good man, brother. And I know
Thank you, brother.
I was supposed to get off 20 minutes ago. I'm gonna get killed by my wife, but that's why I love you, dude. Because I respect you and I respect you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you, my brother.
Take care, guys.
That's all for this episode of the Battle Line Podcast. But we'll be back on Monday with more American Straight Talk. Until then, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Battle Line Podcast and on Twitter at Battle Line Pod. To sign up for future Battle Line tactical courses, go to www.christantoperanto.net. Believe in yourself. Face all challenges head on. And as always, never quit.